Hey guys, welcome to this session by K21 Academy. In this session, we will be working with AWS CodeCommit. AWS CodeCommit is a secure, highly scalable, and managed source control service that hosts private Git repositories. As a managed service, it eliminates the need for you to manage your own source control system or worry about scaling its infrastructure, right? So you can store anything from code to binaries in it, and it supports the standard functionality of Git. So it works seamlessly with existing Git-based tools. So in this session, we will be working with AWS CodeCommit. Also guys, before moving on with this session, please subscribe to our channel so that you will never miss an update on our upcoming videos. Now let us take a quick glance at the agenda. Firstly, we will be introduced to AWS CodeCommit, and then we will be creating IAM user and set HTTPS credentials. Post that, we will be creating CodeCommit repository on AWS console. And then we will be managing code files in CodeCommit from Windows machine on AWS EC2. So here we will try to understand the steps which are required to perform on Windows EC2 instance. And then we will push code files to CodeCommit from Windows EC2. And finally, we will be terminating the resources where we will be deleting AWS CodeCommit repository. So we have taken a clip from one of our certification training program on AWS Certified Developer Associate DVAC01, and in this clip, our expert will be working with AWS CodeCommit.
Hey there, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy, and in this lesson we are going to look at the lab on performing AWS CodeCommit. Now, as you might have understood, or I'll give a quick brief overview about what this lab is, and so you can pick up and understand. So CodeCommit is a code repository like Git or Git's implementation on AWS Cloud, so that you can store all your source code into a central place, which is CodeCommit. Now, what will happen is typically what developers will do is they have the code or central code repository, which when they join the team, first time they will download that central code repository onto their local development machine. And then when they modify anything or they update or they do any changes or create any additional files, and then they push to this central location using git push or we'll see that commands, exact commands. So that's all we are going to do in this lab. So we will have a machine which will act as a developer machine, which is an EC2 Windows machine that we've created in earlier. And that machine will be acting as a developer machine so that when a developer develop any code, they can push it to the central place, which is CodeCommit. And in order to prepare that, we are going to do some, or in order to achieve that, we're going to prepare this machine and we'll do some steps, and that's what we're going to cover in this so that you understand the whole process end to end. So first, as we go in our scene in past as well, first chapter is going to talk about introduction. Second is the documentation link, which will help in what documentation link we have followed. But before that, in every document which we produce, we'll have edition, which means what is the latest version of this guide. This is 11th edition, and this was last updated on 21st is YYMMDD, which means in 9th of January year 2021 is when we updated. And make sure you, when you work, always download the latest copy from the drive. And I'll probably in the welcome or introduction video, I'll introduce, or I would have introduced this where to get this PDF guide as well. We'll talk about that. You should have the PDF guide with you as well. It's somewhere in the place where you're watching this video. So chapter 3 is about prerequisite. And then what we are going to do is, before a developer can upload the data from their development machine to the centralized Git repository or CodeCommit in this case, they should have a Git credentials so that they can configure that Git credential on their local machine, so that when a user is being connected to when a user or a developer is on their desktop machine, when they're saying push, the git command will use this user ID and password to push the data into the central Git repository. So that's what we are going to create this. In this case, we're creating kind of a developer user, IAM user, which will act as a developer, and then we'll set the credential, or we'll get the credential or set the credentials, and we'll collect these credentials. We'll use that credential a little bit later. Then we are going to create a CodeCommit repository on AWS Cloud, that's kind of a central repository for all your developers use. Then we'll have um, some code files we are developing, or we are not actually developing, we are just getting this code file. Imagine developer have developed it. So that we are going to copy some files, um, a code files from our website, so that that will act as a developer have developed those files. And then in chapter 7, we are going to push those code files to the to CodeCommit, which is AWS CodeCommit from our EC2 command, and we'll verify that files are copied by Git. And that's how in future developer will develop something and they'll say git commit and or push. Commit and push, we'll see that command a little bit later. So they will push it. That will be synced into the central place. So that's what it's all about, code commit, SDLC lifecycle, software development lifecycle. And then finally, we'll clean up the resource or the Git repository that we have created, or the code commit repository, basically same thing. And then chapter 9 is about troubleshooting. So if you hit any problem, there's a high probability someone else must have encountered this problem. So make sure you watch that under troubleshooting section. So let's first begin with introduction. I've already mentioned. So this is the machine which will act as a developer machine. We are going to do it on EC2 Windows machine that we have created earlier. And that will be having or have a code commit repository. First time we'll clone that a blank repository, because right now there'll be nothing. Or you can clone in future, maybe you already have a code commit code, and your new developer joins, they will download some code files on their local machine. Then we'll set it up this code commit or this machine, and then developer will develop some files and push them into the central place. That's what we are going to, or that's what we are trying to achieve here. This is the documentation link. So first is make sure you already have an AWS account, make sure you have created a Windows machine, and make sure you have already have CLI installed. And in that lab, we did Git as well. And if you have not yet done, make sure you go back to the previous module and complete this lab where we installed Git and AWS CLI, because Git will be used in this lab in this here. So if you get an error saying Git is not installed, that means you have not done the previous step or previous guide. So first is we will need a developer user that will be used in future to connect from that machine to push the data into Git repository. Now, if you remember when we did earlier AWS CLI, we created a user. You can use that user or you can create a new user. Now, steps to create the user are no different, so I'm not going to cover that again. I'm going to use the same user that I created earlier for Git AWS CLI. So use that same steps to create it. The only difference is that we will have to generate another credential, and this time it will be a Git SSH keys or Git credentials or HTTPS Git credentials. That's what we need to collect onto that. But if you have not created, or if you want to do this user one more time, if you have not done it, go to Identity and Access Management, click on Add User, and then we'll follow the same process as adding the user that we have done in the previous module. We give that access programmatically, AWS Management Console, we generate the password, and then you basically add this user to a group called administrator. We'll create a group called a developer, but give them access of administrator. And then you click on next, ignore the tags, and then you create the user and make sure that sign out. And then before you sign out, you will collect the login URL, or so there are two ways you can collect this login URL. I'll explain that you in a minute. And then you log in back to this user. You provide your account ID. If you're logging in directly, you provide the account ID should already be there. I'm going to show you where to find this account ID. And you log in as a user that you've created with the password on AWS console. And then go to this user, and then click on security challenge and scroll down and say generate credential, and this is a different type of credential, which is HTTPS Git credential. Earlier when we did AWS CLI, that was a different credential. So these are two different credentials, and we are going to collect this and we'll save it in a notepad because we're going to use that later. So let me connect to the AWS console and show it to you. So first is I'm on this here. You go to IAM. I want to show you the URL or account ID. So you click on here. This is my account ID. You need to make a note. You can either make a note of this and pick this, or you can go to the IAM user, click on this user, click on security credentials, and you can get the console sign-in URL. You can either copy this or you can copy this my account, one of these. Log out from here. If you've already logged in as administrator, sign out, and then you say log into the console, and you already have this key, or maybe you say by default, if you see sign in as a root user, let me show you. This is typically login ID you see. So you can say click on IAM user and the account that you clicked earlier, and then next. And this is where you will use your IAM user and password. Other option, as I was telling you, is earlier you copied that URL. When you copy this URL, you say that next, you will come back to the same screen like this, which means the account ID is already populated to you. In this case, I already have this user I've created. I go to the IAM. I'll come back to the screen, same screen. That's where I landed earlier, and click on users. This is a user. This is my developer user. This is where I'm acting this user. I'll go to security credentials, scroll down. So earlier when we were doing the AWS CLI, we used something called as access key, which is a different than my Git credential. So this time we need Git credential for AWS CodeCommit. Now already generated this credential. Otherwise, let me show you how you'll do. I've deleted. Let me delete it, because I already did this lab and I already created it. I want to show you by default. This is how it will be visible for you. Like there'll be nothing. It will be HTTPS Git credentials. So click on generate credentials. So you make a note of this user ID and this key as well. Copy these and make sure you store them. We'll need this in next step in future episodes. So close this. For some reason, if you forgot to copy, you can select this again and you can say reset password, and you will get the new key like this, user ID and key. So once we have collected, we got the credential of this user now. Next is we need to create a code commit repository on AWS console. So you can pick of any region of your choice. I'm going to pick something else. You can pick whatever you're comfortable with. So you'll go and search for code commit, and then you say code commit, give a description and click on create, and this will create code commit. Now you also need to copy this URL, because we'll need this URL when we go to the developer machine. We'll need two things. One is this code, this repository URL, and we'll also need the credential that we generated earlier. So once this is done, then we will be moving on to the next step. So let me go back to the console and create this code commit. So I'll come here on AWS console. I'll say code commit, click on this text here. Now this will be blank by default. You say create a repository here, and you can give any name of this code repository. So we'll say we are giving code underscore commit underscore demo. You can give anything of your choice. It doesn't matter, to be frank, but code underscore commit underscore demo. The URL next we do is important. So click on create. And now this is my connection step. If you can close this and you can see by default there's nothing in this code. This is an empty repository. You expand this from here and scroll down. This is the clone repository URL. This is how I can clone the repository. Copy. So by default it's a blank right now. So I'll make a note of this and I'll save this, keep it here. I'll need it in my next step. So you go back, and now we know that my code is blank. Right now this repository is blank. There's nothing in this repository. So next I'm going to do is, now I'm going to connect to my developer machine, or a machine that will act as a developer machine, which is my EC2 instance of Windows machine that you created, and I'll connect using RDP. We already did that. And I'll open the command prompt. I'll open the command prompt and then check the Git version. Once I check the Git version, the Git we installed in one of the previous modules. So if you see that Git not installed, that means you need to go back to the previous module and install Git software as we covered in AWS CLI command step. So once we are in this, we are going to first time create a new folder on desktop. Under desktop, we'll create a new folder called GitHub. Now, again, you can create, you can directly work on any folder, but for easy comfort or for to remember and put every code into one single place, we'll create a folder called GitHub. And then I'll and go to this folder from command line, which is desktop GitHub, and configure my Git first time or initialize my Git first time, which is I'm saying here git config, and I'm entering my global email address and username, and it can be anything. It doesn't tie anything. It needs it for information purpose. And then I'm going to initialize the Git first time, and then I'll clone. But you replace this yellow marking with whatever name, your name and or email address name, and this URL you'll be up, updating with whatever URL you got when you copied in one of the previous step. And so what we'll do is when you say git clone, first time it's going to prompt you from the user ID and password, which means in order to extract the data from the Git on central, which was a blank, will not get anything, but because it's a blank empty, but that way it will know that it'll connect to that Git repository. So and I'll be entering the user ID and username and password. And this username and password is the one which we collected earlier from Git credentials earlier for this user. So that's what we're going to enter here. And once we save it, this is the credentials. It will save that information into my desktop's wallet manager. I'll show you where it has been, where it's being saved. And once you go, you will see that it says cloned an empty directory, which means there's nothing on this empty directory. We'll go inside and you will not find any files inside that. It's just two directories, empty directories. So that's what we have cloned, or we have connected my we have configured the connection on my developer machine so that it knows how to talk to my code commit. That's what we are going to do in this. So let's go to the EC2 that we created earlier, Windows machine we created. If you have not yet started, make sure you, or if it's down, make sure you start the instance and then connect to this machine. We have done this in past, so I'm not going to do too much, or we have done this step number of times. Right now its machine is down. I'm starting this. This is Windows machine, and it's always good practice that to shut down services once you are done with this. Now, once machine is up and running, you will see the connection detail here, and we'll be able to connect, or this will be once it's successfully started. I'm going to go to the remote desktop. So type remote desktop, and I'm connecting to this machine. So we'll say connect and RDP client. I copy this public DNS. Type, and DNS will change every time you restart the machine because the IP address changes. You can have the static IP as well on this machine. Click on connect. Now, as we saw earlier, we need to change the user ID. So we'll be changing user as administrator. Now, I already reset this password in past from Windows. So it was, I think, welcome one. If you don't have the password, you can click on get password and provide your PEM file or key files on there. Click on OK. Say accept the SSL certificates. And we are now on my Windows machine. All we need to do is let me open this side by side so that I can work on this. So what I'm going to do is first I'll go to the command prompt and open or check the Git version first. So on this command prompt, let me keep it on side by side. So I'll type command prompt cmd. Let me bring it a little bit better here and say git -- version. And I got the version 2.3, which is, or 2.30, which is good enough. It should be more than 1 dot something, which is, we are good. Now I need to minimize this Windows command prompt, and I need to create a folder, which is, as I said, new folder as GitHub. So on the desktop, right click, I'm on my Windows EC2. So click on new and folder and give it as name GitHub. So now it has successfully created this GitHub. I'll open the command prompt again and I'll go to this folder called under desktop. There'll be GitHub. So go back to my desktop again here and I'll be typing cd desktop and then GitHub here. So I'm on the GitHub and now I need to copy this first part, which is still email, and then right click here and then enter in double quotes my email address, which is support at K21 Academy. Now let me make it slightly bigger so that we don't ACA and hit enter. Now next is I'm going to set my email address. I'm configuring my Git so that if it needs this information, and again here my name, and then I need to git initialize git init. Now initialize the Git. So it has basically what it does is it creates under this folder a folder called Git, which is a hidden file Git, and it'll have some configuration inside that hidden file Git. Now I need to go back to my command which I copied earlier, which is this URL git clone. So let me copy one more time and hit enter. Now when you do this, what it's going to do is it's going to prompt me a Git credential manager, and this is where I'll be entering my user ID and password that I collect or created earlier. So I'll paste and this key as well. Now guys, don't try it out because I'll probably after this lab exercise I'll cancel. Oh, where is gone? I'll be canceling this or deleting this key as well. So click on paste and click OK. Now, what this does is it stores this configuration into my Windows credential manager. So if I go to, I think if I scroll down, preferences or settings, configuration, control panel, if you want to see where these credentials are, so then I'm going to go inside here on search and I'm going to search password, credential manager, and manage my Windows credentials. So click on credential manager, Windows credential. If you see now my generic credentials, it has stored modified today on GitHub repository. If you scroll down here, so this is my URL, network access, this is the URL, and this is my username, this is my password, and locally stored. That's how my next time if I start the Git, this is a one-time task. It will not prompt me to connect. So this is how it connects from this machine to my central place or code repository. Then, so I've done this, I've created or managed to access this credentials or configure, and then now I'm going to git clone, and you should have said clone an empty repository, which is warning you appear to have cloned an empty repository, which is self-explanatory, which is okay. Now I'm going to go to this CodeCommit demo, because this what it happens is it creates a folder called CodeCommit a demo, or whatever is the code name you've created or earlier, a repository name. So because I created repository on CodeCommit as code_commit_demo, that's why it has created this folder. So if I do directory inside that, there is no folder. There is two folders, which is dot and dot dot, which is parent directory and the current directory, but there's no file, zero files inside that, which is self-explanatory. So now we are good. We have now connected my developer machine so that it knows where to connect to code, which code repository it needs to connect to. Now, I need to create some files, and there's no point in me creating the files manually. So I simply download some file. I'm mimicking that. Oh, I have some files. So I'll copy this URL. And then what I'm doing is I'm opening the Internet Explorer and I'll copy or I'll get this file downloaded on my PC here, laptop. Hit enter. And here it's saying I want to save this file. And then once it's complete, I'll open this folder. Under download, go back to download folder. This file is already copied here. So I'll copy this file, and then under desktop, I created this GitHub folder. Inside that code commit demo, I'll paste it here. Control C earlier I did and paste here. So I've got this version 1. I'm going to unzip it, extract here, and say click on extract. So I'm extracting under version 1, say extract. So if you see now, I had two files. So in a nutshell, inside this code demo folder, I have created, let me first go and delete this zip file and delete. So under code commit demo, I have this file called version 1. Inside that, I have my, code files. So these are my two code files that I need to push into my repository. So before I push now, we have mimicked and thinking that, or what we have done is we have tried and showing, let me close. We have tried showing that developer have developed some files, which these files they want to push it to my code repository. So that's what we are going to do. So I've already done these tasks. So first we are going to go and see into my code repository that there is no file inside this. So if I go back to 1 second, not here, I'll go to code commit. So till now we have a blank. We have created some file on my developer. If I go inside this code commit, maybe minimize this or do, and right now it's empty repository. So all I need to do is, this is a one-time setup. I'm doing git add a. Now you can Google on what is git add a. This is all developers do this, and we are trying to mimic here. So we'll go and command prompt, and I'm going to do it from code commit demo folder. So I'm inside that code commit demo folder and paste here and say git add a, and then commit. So initial file import. These are two commands my developers have told me to do it. Maybe it's worth, I'll explain inside the class what we do on these. So it's basically, it's saying two files change. So it's locally added into, it has committed these into the local repository. So right now on my local repository, and now we've already verified that it's blank, and now I'm ready to push this code. So my developer have committed this into local repository, and I want to now, they're ready to push it into from this their developer machine to the central repository. So hit push or hit enter, and this will say that, hey, counting objects 5 for 5 done. There are 5 files are being, maybe it's folders or everything. So whatever was there, it had added a new branch, master, and I've copied those files onto the here repository. So we'll just refresh or go to repository again and click on this code demo. So if you see version 1, this is the folder which we created, we wanted. So, and in that there are 2 files. So 1, 2, 3, I think it counts my folders as well. So I had 2 files here. If I log in and look at my code folder, 1 second. Okay, it's up here. So inside version 1, I had 2 files built as X. And if I now create any further file here, maybe say copy, and I'm trying to act as a little bit extra smart and say rename. This is not given in our guide, Atul something file or whatever file, and let's see if it works. Okay, so I'll go back and say this time, one more time, git push. Everything is up to date. So I've not committed it locally first. So I'll say maybe commit, and let's say second file import. Nothing added, but okay, so it has untracked file use add. So maybe I need to add this file and git add. So this is something I'm learning. I'm not a developer, but it's good to know, and it's expecting or telling me. So we'll say version 1 and then /atul.cpp. And I'm hoping this is correct. So this is added, git add and git commit. And now I say git push. Brilliant. I've learned something new. So we'll come here and refresh here under version 1. Voila, we got atul.cpp. So this is how developers do. It's good. Again, if you're not a developer, it's good to know so that you can understand this process. This is SDLC, software development lifecycle process. So let's go back to the documentation. You've successfully copied or synced this file now. All you need to do is now you need to terminate. Make sure, though it's very you don't be charged for this code because you get a repository because it's very small in size. You get anyway 5 gig or some limit for this code repository, but it's always good to clean up. So I'll go and select this code and delete it. And you need to type enter delete and you click on delete, then you'll be able to delete it. Now, any problem you hit, you refer to the troubleshooting section and make sure that most of your issues should already be in troubleshooting. So let me go here and go to repositories and we are cleaning it up now. So we'll select and say delete repository and type here delete and click on delete. And this will now clean up the code from this server here. There's no money being charged for user, so we can leave the user as it is there in our system or in our account. Well, this completes how to create or how to configure Git and push the code into Git repository or central Git repository. With that, this is Atul from Team K21 Academy. Thanks for joining or attending this session.
We have put down everything about the certification, including the basic concepts that one should be knowing. So you will begin with Introduction to Cloud, AWS and Developer Tools, creating cloud account, user management and object storage options, designing and computing, auto scaling and load balancing, AWS integration and messaging services like Simple Notification Service, Simple Queue Service, Simple Email Service and Kinesis. Serverless on AWS, continuous integration or continuous delivery and developer tools, security, monitoring, database services, Docker on AWS, and then you will do projects. So this is the most important point, right? Once you understand the basic concepts, then you run projects on top of that. So you have multiple projects. As a part of this program, you will be doing projects on that. And finally, you will be giving the certification exam. We provide you some sample questions through which you would be preparing. In this 12-week roadmap, we take you from basics to advanced level along with the tips and resources for clearing the certification exam. Once you are done with the certification, then start preparing your CV and start applying for jobs. The learning you have done here and the projects you have done here will help you to get a job. We also have a separate team working for CV preparation and on-job support. So if you want to become AWS Certified Developer Associate and want to learn right from basics to expert level, then we have a comprehensive step-by-step training for you that includes hands-on labs, including exam preparation, and most important part, 1 year on-job support. If you are interested in this program, then I would highly recommend you to attend our free class, which covers from why and who should learn AWS, cloud service, deployment models, and AWS services, live demo on creating a simple code pipeline, and many more things. If you are interested in this free class, you can visit k21academy.com/AWSDev02. You can also find the link in the description.